Hi, this is Kerry with Multicopter Warehouse, and today we're going to take a look at the new Autel Evo 2 Dual. So stay right there. We'll be right back. Well, hi everybody, and if you didn't know already, we are now an official Autel distributor, and we will be carrying the Autel Evo 2 line of products. But today I'm going to start off with the Evo 2 Dual. I think this is one of the more exciting products from Autel, and it fits a niche that exists out in the market. So let's get into it. Now we do carry the 6K and the 8K as well. Those are more consumer products. They do have their place in enterprise things with certain types of inspection work and things, but today we're focusing on the Dual. So let's first talk about the aircraft itself. It's looks a little bit bigger than a Mavic 2, which it is, and I'll do some comparisons later, but it has really robust body, feels really stout. It's got a good feel to it. Doesn't feel cheap or real plasticky. The range on it is rated at 5.5 miles, and I haven't put it out that far, beyond visual line of sight. Can't really do that, and but I have not had any problems with range in the conditions that I have flown it in. Now, it is rated for 40 minutes of flight time. Now, I'm not getting that here in Colorado. We're almost 6,000 feet above sea level, and some of the testing I've done has been at 8,000 feet. So I'm definitely not getting 40 minutes, but I am getting in the mid 30-minute range, or the between 32 and 34 minutes of flight time. So very respectable flight time for our altitudes for sure. It has 12 vision sensors on it: forward, back, top, left, right, bottom. So the obstacle avoidance on this is excellent. I have yet to be able to stuff it into anything, despite my valiant attempts at running through trees and having it follow me on trails with my Jeep. It has performed extremely well with the obstacle avoidance. Now, internally, there is 8 gigs of storage, and it can support up to a 256 gig external micro SD card. And you'll want to make sure you have a V30 rated card for that to make sure it can handle the 120 megabit data rate. Now, the camera on here is a dual camera. It has a visible, daylight, RGB camera, whatever you want to call it, a normal camera, and it has a thermal camera, and that's why it's called a dual. When taking stills, the daylight camera can take up to 8,000 by 6,000 pixels, which is quite large, 48 megapixel images, and the infrared or thermal camera can do 640 by 512. Now that is quite large for a thermal camera, especially something in this size, considering the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual can only do 160 by 120. So it says much more resolution on the thermal than the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual. On the visible camera, it can shoot in 10-bit log format, giving you a lot of room for color grading, post-production, making sure that your colors can match other cameras. So very good quality on the visible camera. And again, it's 640 by 512 on the thermal camera for the video as well. Now it can do H.264 or H.265 on the visible camera, giving you some really nice data considering it's only 120 megabits, and being able to shoot in 8K and 6K are kind of, let's call them data heavy requirements for that. So you'll need that H.265. And well, I'll get to the video quality in just a moment. I'll finish up on the specs. On the visible camera, the aperture is a fixed aperture at f1.8, so pretty wide aperture, letting a lot of light in. And it can support ISO 100 to 3200. And the thermal camera doesn't have quite the same specs. You don't have ISO and aperture on a thermal camera. But let's talk about the daylight camera for just a moment. Like I said, it does support 6K and 8K, and those are very heavy on data requirements. So you end up with quite a bit of compression. Now here I've got some footage that was shot in 8K on a pine tree, so you can kind of see the level of detail that you'll get. And then here's some 6K footage doing the same thing. Should see a little bit of improvement there. And here is the 4K footage, and the 4K footage looks really, really good. So I would not look at any of the Evo 2 products, the 6K, the 8K, or the Dual, for that 6K or 8K footage. But if you're shooting 4K, you're going to get really, really good 4K. So I think that's the sweet spot right there, is shooting 1080 or 4K, but not 6K or 8K. Now on the thermal, while it has really good resolution, which is on par with the top end of the DJI products, the H20T or the XT2, both being 640 by 512, there are a couple disadvantages to this particular thermal camera. The number one issue with the infrared camera on here is that there's no way to get temperature data. There's no on-screen display, there's no radiometric JPEGs, you can't run reports later against the images. You're only seeing a temperature differential on the screen or in your images. There's no temperature data at all. So you cannot do spot metering live, you can't do analysis later, you can't do other types of functions that require temperature, such as isotherm, which is the ability to set a temperature range and have that display a little more prominent on the screen, or being able to do temperature alerts so that if a certain temperature range is detected, you get an alert on the screen. It can't do any of those today. Now, I don't know if those are things that can be upgraded in firmware down the road. I've made those recommendations to Autel, but those can be fairly limiting for some things. So who is this product for? Well, number one, public safety. There's a big aspect here where you only need temperature differential. You don't need to know how hot is it. You need to know, is that hotter than this? So trying to detect a body, a suspect, a victim out in a field or something where you're looking for a body temperature versus ambient temperature, going to work extremely well. Firefighters being able to look at a building and be able to put their firefighters in the right places so that they see where the heat is moving. For roof inspection, being able to see thermal leakage on the sides of a building or on the roof of a building where more insulation may be needed. Solar panel inspections, because you just need to see, is that component working? And the temperature will be different than ones next to it that are working. So in that case, solar panel inspections can be really useful with this. Where it's not going to work is like utility inspection, where you may be inspecting power pole transformers, for example, and those run fairly hot, and all you can see is it's hot. Well, great. How hot is it? You need to be able to tell an engineer it is this temperature so that they can determine whether that component is within spec or not. Is it running too hot, or is it within nominal operating temperatures? So if you need that, what temperature is it, you're going to need to move up to a larger platform with either an XT2 or an H20T camera. So the Autel Evo 2 Dual cannot do that. And to be fair, the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, it's really not geared for that either. There is a spot meter, but you can't save that anywhere. So on these small systems, doing certain types of inspection work is really not going to cut it. You need a bigger system. But on anything where is this warmer than that, these are going to work extremely well. Now let's talk about the controller for a moment. Controller is very handy. It's got a nice little clamshell design. Instead of your phone fitting on the bottom, it fits on the top. It has an OLED display on here. So if you just take off and you do not have a phone on here, you can push the display button on the side and actually see all your live view right here. Take your pictures, take your videos, and you don't actually need to have a phone on here. You are going to need to have a phone if you want some of these smart features like dynamic track, the point of interest. those are going to require to have your phone in here. If you want to do mapping missions, it's going to require you to have your phone in here. But for just basic get up, fly, shoot, take pictures, video, this is going to work really well. So on here we have the auto takeoff and land, the power button, the pause the current task. So if it's in an automated mode or something, you can kill that. You have your return to home. What's kind of missing on here, which I wish I would have done, would have been removable joysticks, just to make putting it in a case or a backpack a little easier without being able to hit those. Then you have some control dials on the top for exposure and your camera tilt. Your photo, or your on the left side, you have the start and stop recording video. On the right, you have your camera shutter. You have a display button, which will toggle different display modes. And on the back, you have an A button, which I can't remember exactly what that does, and the B button, which is the most annoying feature on here, which will start it listening to you for voice commands. And I wish they would have the ability to disable that and let me change that to something else, because that is extremely annoying when it's popping up constantly when I hit that and saying, you can say, take off, land. I mean, I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going to use voice commands. And then on the bottom, you have a USB-A and a USB-C port for doing your charging and for connecting to your phone. So there's that. Now let's talk about the app itself. It is called the Explorer app, and the Autel Explorer, it's similar to the DJI Go or the DJI Pilot app. It controls all your intelligent functions, your camera settings, and those types of features. And when you start it up, it gives you the choice between going into camera mode or mission mode. And on your camera mode, that's your standard flight mode with your different features, your camera settings, all the stuff you would need to control the aircraft. If you go into the mission mode, this is where you can set up mapping missions. So while it doesn't support a third-party app like Pix4D Capture, it does have its own mission planning app, so you can make those mapping missions. You can do a waypoint mission for point to point to point, or a rectangular or polygon mission to do like a 2D or 3D capture. And then those images will work with Pix4D. And here's a map that I did with the system. Just a very, very quick single grid, so the sides of the buildings aren't super clean. And then after this, a firmware and software update came out to allow for a dual grid mission, which would really clean up the sides of those buildings. Question is, can you do mapping with the thermal camera? And the quick answer to that is yes. Now, you're going to be able to do 2D maps with thermal. Doing a 3D map is a little hokey, but here's a 2D map that I did showing that you can do a very good 2D thermal map. It works very good. I can do my measurements off there. Everything's going to work. And what happens with a 3D map? Well, the problem is there's just not enough detail when we're looking at thermal data. So the sides of a building may not work right. Now, here's a 3D image that I did, and the sides of the buildings are missing, and it made the roof look like it was below grade. So kind of funny, but yeah, you're not going to do good 3D maps with a thermal camera. But a 2D map is going to be really good. So if you need to do that for a search and rescue mission or a roof inspection, that's actually going to work pretty well. Now, when we're using the Autel Explorer app on the Evo 2 Dual, there's 3 different video modes to be displayed. We have our daylight camera only, which you can see here. Then we can switch to our thermal only, which you can see here. That gives us a better view of the thermal image. And then we have a picture-in-picture, which is going to overlay the thermal image on top of the daylight image, giving you both views at the same time, but also showing you what the field of view is on the thermal, which is much smaller than the field of view on the regular camera. Now, you can also opt to have all of those images saved at the same time, or just one or the other. But I typically have them all on just so I'm getting all the data all the time. So I kind of like that. And the overlay is really handy to make sure that you're getting things framed up properly, or just switch fully to the thermal camera. Now, one other downside of the thermal camera that the Mavic 2 Enterprise has is MXX, and that's the overlay of the video and thermal image kind of combined so that you pick up more detail in the thermal image. Now, that does give the Mavic 2 Enterprise an advantage with its lower resolution thermal camera because it helps enhance the quality of the image. It helps enhance the detail of the image. So for that, it's kind of a win, and I really wish that was available on the Evo 2 Dual. That would really make this a better product. So hopefully that's something that they can implement, because that is a FLIR technology, not a DJI technology, and this is a FLIR sensor. So hopefully we could see that down the road, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, before we get into some comparison stuff, I do want to talk about the Autel Live Deck. Now, this is a transceiver, actually, and essentially it is a remote controller without joysticks. And it also happens to have HDMI out and some other features. But if you plug your phone into the USB port running the Autel Explorer app, it is just like having it on a controller. It's just you have no joysticks, but everything else works. So it's kind of interesting that you can run the Explorer app through the HDMI or through the USB port on here. This also has HDMI output, so I can go right to a screen. And it has a network port, so I can stream RTSP so that a remote location can pick that up and display it. So this is very, very handy. I definitely recommend this for most public safety operations so that you can get back to a command center or a headquarters or something else. It has the exact same range as the remote controller, so as long as it has a good line of sight to the aircraft, you will get the exact same range as the remote controller. The system comes as the rugged bundle, and that's going to have this carrying case, 2 batteries, a charging hub, your normal charging cable, a car charger, the props, and your cables. Very nice package here, very good stout case. Don't have any complaints there. Then you can just add a couple more batteries to really flush out your kit. So everyone's going to ask the question, how does it compare to a Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual? Now, I've already talked about the camera, and the camera on the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, specifically the thermal, is 160 by 120 versus 640 by 512 on the Autel. So here's a little size comparison here. I'll pop up some photos so you can see it folded, and then here's an image of them unfolded. So you can see there really isn't a huge difference in size. The Autel is going to stand a little bit taller. It's just a hair wider. It's just a hair longer. So if you're thinking size is a big factor in your decision, either one of these is fine. The Autel is only just a hair bigger, so I don't really look at that. The Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual has a couple features that the Evo 2 Dual does not. It has the accessory port, and it comes with the nighttime strobe, the spotlight, and the loudspeaker. So those can be really useful tools for public safety. And it has ADSB in, so you can detect other aircraft around that have an ADSB out transmitter on them to warn you of other aircraft. And the flight time is a little less on here. Has all the good sensors. Don't have any real complaints about the sensor system on here. The Evo 2 Dual has one advantage that some people are going to find to be really important, and that is a lack of geofencing. Now, that's not to say it may not come down the road, but today there is no geofencing restrictions on the Evo 2 product line. So if you want to take off from the middle of a runway, it's absolutely going to let you do it. Now, range, the Mavic 2 Enterprise is rated for a little bit more range, another couple miles. Not that that's a big deal when we're really not flying beyond visual line of sight unless you have a waiver for it. the maximum altitude above takeoff. Now, if you remove the safety restrictions on both of these, the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual will go to a max of approximately 1,640 feet, where the Evo 2 Dual will go to a max of about 2,640 feet. So for certain types of mountain search and rescue missions where they need to follow the terrain up the side of a hill and get to the top or something, there have been times that the Mavic 2 Enterprise has simply run out of available altitude, where the Evo 2 Dual will get you another 1,000 feet up that hill. So in certain cases, that's going to be an advantage to the Evo 2 Dual. Now, in terms of overall flight characteristics and the app, I find that the DJI product is, well, it just feels more refined. It feels more polished. And granted, they've got more engineers and they've got more time in the market, so it makes sense that their product just feels a little bit more refined. The Evo 2 Dual is fully functional. Everything works. The hardware itself feels really solid. It's just there's a few things that just don't quite feel maybe as smooth or as polished, refined. I know that's very subjective and it's really hard to pick out certain things about it, but the feel is a little bit different. And right now, I kind of still prefer the feel of the DJI products over how the Evo 2 product flies. But I've made a lot of suggestions to them. I've already seen some of those implemented in terms of more adjustability in the flight parameters for the Evo 2 Dual. So hopefully this will actually come along quite well. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is concerns, all right? And when we're talking to customers, especially government agencies, there's two concerns that come up on a regular basis, and I want to address both of them. The first is, it's not DJI. Okay, well, that's fine, but what does that really mean, right? There's been plenty of news out there about concerns of DJI security, and yet multiple cybersecurity firms have analyzed the data and nothing is being transmitted back to DJI unless the user clicks on the sync flight logs, in which case you are handing over your flight logs to a DJI server. Now, there's no indication that they can have access to that or that they see that or anything else without having your login and password. But if that's a concern, don't sync your flight logs. On the Evo 2 Dual, it is exactly the same. You have the option to click on a synchronize button to send your flight logs to Autel. So in terms of security, basically identical across both of them, which to me is non-issue at all, so long as you don't push the synchronize your logs. Now, if you don't care, like I don't, I'm not flying around any critical infrastructure or anything like that. And I do want my flight logs to be stored forever, and I want to be able to access them from multiple devices. So yes, I do sync my flight logs so that I have access to that information. Now, the second one is we want a non-Chinese product. Well, and Autel they're based in Washington, so they're not a Chinese company. Well, their parent company is. Their parent company has been around for quite a while, and they are most certainly a Chinese company. And the aircraft and the remote and everything are manufactured in China, definitely using Chinese components. So if you have a mandate that you cannot use a Chinese manufactured drone or use a drone that uses Chinese parts, neither one of these is going to work for you, and good luck trying to find something. There's not much out there. And what is out there really isn't comparable to these two units. You're going to look at substandard products that just fit the bill of being not DJI or not Chinese. So I think that's an internal policy that would need to be addressed because it's just not valid in terms of security or any other measures. Anything that's driving that is purely political. So that's my little rant on those two concerns. So overall, the Evo 2 product line is very solid, very capable, very functional. The thermal camera on here is absolutely excellent. The high resolution is great. So if you have some interest in the pricing on the Autel Evo 2 Dual, unfortunately I can't put it in the video. We can't list it on our website, but you can contact us for a quote. Just send an email to enterprise@multicopterwarehouse.com, and we'll make sure one of our sales reps gets back to you as quickly as possible and puts together a quote for you based on your needs and requirements. Maybe you need extra batteries, landing pads, memory cards, things like that. So we'll put together a quote that makes sense for you. So thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Kerry. I hope this has been informative and answered a lot of the questions that people had about the Autel products. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.